Welcome to Straight Talk Vermont with Linda Joy Sullivan, where we get it straight. And our featured guest today is Matt Maxwell, the town administrator of Coventry. Welcome.
Thank you, Linda. I appreciate you having me here.
I'm so pleased that you were here. We've got so much to talk about. Let's tell our listeners a little bit about your history, how you became the town administrator, what you did before, and why you wanted to be the town administrator.
So I was working on the family dairy farm here in Coventry, and the town administrator position in Coventry became available about 3 years ago, a little more than 3 years ago. And at the point, I'm not afraid to admit I was burnt out on farming, and I think I needed to do something a little bit different. And town administrator is kind of in my background. I went to college for finance.
Okay.
So I worked in Boston in the finance industry for a number of years before I was farming. So I had a little bit of experience there. And I grew up in the town. I love the town of Coventry. My family's been there for 50, 60 years. A lot of good friends and a lot of people I know are there. So it was just an easy fit. It didn't I didn't have to move my house, move anywhere or anything. I could stay living right where I was, and easy commute down there, and just a chance to do something different and help out the town.
So farming, big word.
Yeah.
What type of farming? I'm from Manhattan,
Yep.
and so I totally get green acres, but
Yep.
what type of farming?
So for Vermont, we're considered a large farm.
Okay.
So they have small farms, medium size, and large farms regulated by the Agency of Agriculture. So we're considered a large farm. We milk 800, 900 cows.
Wow.
So and our take care of several thousand acres of land in either corn or grass. So we're pretty heavily regulated, and it's a lot goes into it. It's more of a business than it is
Sure.
just kind of a hobby.
So are you having difficulty bringing on employees, or do you have long-term employees?
We've had pretty good success with long-term employees. We've had guys that have stayed 5 or 6 years, and then they'll go back to wherever they're from, and we've had local guys here that we've been very successful keeping on. As long as you keep up with the cost of living around here. I mean, it's not agriculture is not a profit-heavy business, but as long as you pay a sustainable wage, you can usually get pretty decent people to fill those spots.
Do most of the employees live within Orleans County?
Yeah, most of I would say 95% of ours.
Wow.
Yeah, and a lot of them will live right near the farm. Is close. We provide some housing. So employee housing. So
that's great to know.
Yeah.
Tell me about that, because those are always the issues out here that,
Yep.
everybody's saying, oh my goodness, I can't work close to home,
Yep.
I can't get housing. And I'm always, I'm one of the commissioners on the Vermont State Housing Authority, and a big concern is, where do employees get to live, and do employers actually have the ability to maybe assist sometimes? So
Yep.
tell me about the program or whatever you've set up.
So what we did was, when we sort of expanded the farm, 10, or I guess now 20 or 25 years ago, and we went from a milking a couple hundred cows to what we are now, 800 or 900. We bought a few properties around the farm, and we would provide those would be provided for housing for employees. And then if they didn't need that housing, we could rent it out and use it for rental income. But
Wow.
if there was a need, like we have a guy that feeds the cows for us, and he lives in a farm housing and stuff like that. A lot of guys that do the milking live right in farm housing, so that's part of their salary.
Their compensation,
Yep,
sure.
yep. So
That's
they don't
fantastic.
they don't pay rent or mortgage or anything like that. They have a place to live, and it's furnished, and try to make them as comfortable as possible.
Right.
Yeah.
So do most of the employees, have they come with experience, or some did you train?
Some come with experience. You know, a lot of them will come from, they've already worked on other large farms, you know, and they'll just, you know, another opportunity comes up. Maybe we're offering a little bit better pay than some places, so they'll come try us out for a little bit, and if it, you know, hopefully they stay. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't.
Sure.
So. But yeah, we just try to stay as competitive as we can with, you know, the other farms in the area around here.
So have you found working, say, with the administration, with the state administration, easy? Are there some issues? Are you following any of the bills?
Yeah, we follow all the bills. We've actually had a pretty good relationship with the Agency of Agriculture over the year. You know, They have a job to do, which is, you know, to protect the integrity of the land in the state, and you know, that's a big job. And you know, farms, we create a lot of waste, animal waste, and they want to make sure that that's being applied correctly to the land. You know, they don't want to
Sure, public safety.
Yeah, public safety, and then of course there's people that live adjacent to these great big giant farms, and you know, they have a right to, you know, exist and not be, you know, put out by, you know, trucks going by their house 100 miles an hour, you know, 24 hours a day. So it's been good. You know, it's good. It's a lot of give and take. But I think the state of Vermont does a pretty good job of balancing, you know, letting these farms run as a business, but at the same time sort of protecting the way the state is, so it doesn't get, you know, we don't deplete the resources that we have here.
Yeah, they have a good handle, I believe, from what I've been following.
Yep.
And when I was up there as a legislator, on the balance.
Yes.
You know, they understand the need for business, they understand the need for comfort living, and they understand the need for safety.
Yep.
But they also are concerned about the climate, and they also are concerned about the animal welfare.
Yes, yep, they are. And I think Anson Tab, he's done a really good job.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, I was skeptical about him because of his background at first, but he has done a wonderful job. And you know, he goes around, he travels around the state, he meets with a lot of farmers, and he's very quite knowledgeable, and I think he's done quite a bit to you know, sort of repair some of the damage that had been done in previous administrations. Sure. Between the farmers and the Agency of Agriculture. He smoothed a lot of that over, and you know, from the farmers that I've talked to, most people think he's doing a pretty good job.
You know, I think his willingness to go face to face and meet the actual people, and then bring it back to his team and discuss it.
Yep.
And then not keep those conversations in a silo is what is giving him more working ground and able to advance forward. So I applaud what he's doing.
And he definitely understands, you know, the economic impact that dairy has in the state of Vermont. I mean, it's probably $1 billion industry in the States, and he understands that, you know, it's important to keep these farms doing what they're doing.
Do you think that the issues going on, say, with Canada right now and with the federal rules that may come down, is going to affect your industry?
Absolutely. Because
can you talk a little bit?
Well, we buy a lot the grain out of Canada. So I mean, with the relationship we have with the Canadian government right now, we've seen an increase in what we're paying for.
Okay. It's already started.
Oh yeah. I mean, it started whatever the date, whatever that day was, when the tariffs or whatever kicked in. So you know, we've definitely seen an uptick in what we're paying for what we have to feed our animals. And
so how will that affect your business? Will you need to downsize, or
I don't
maybe not?
think we just might have to purchase our grain someplace else. That's you know, and which is too bad, because we've had a relationship with this company for 20 years, and you know, they're right across the border, which is close, you know, very close to us, and
Don't say 50.
They've been very, very reliable, and of course, they provide a nutritionist that comes and looks at our cows and makes recommendations and all that stuff.
Good.
Yeah, so but
those are difficult relationships to culture and then lose.
Yeah, but at the bottom, at the end of the day, it's it's about money. And
so, are there New England competitive places that you'd go?
There are.
Or would you have to go beyond?
No, we could definitely find some stuff in the state of Vermont, or at least in New York State, close enough. There's lots of I wouldn't say lots, but there's a few. There's enough feed providers that.
It's such a fascinating industry, as I said, I'm from Manhattan,
right.
So the wildest animal I know is the roach.
Yeah.
And so, if you live on top of a restaurant,
right.
Okay, but if you don't, you don't really know wild animals, or farm animals, So it's really a fascinating industry. So when you started that business, and then I want to get into the actual town administration discussion, your parents started it, grandparents?
Grandparents, yeah. My grandparents started it, back in the early 50s.
So were they native Vermonters?
They were. My grandmother grew up in Bradford, or down near Bradford, and my grandfather, I think, was born in Brownington, but he had just gotten out of the service in the early 50s, and decided to. They rented up here for a while, and then they ended up buying the place.
So tell me the truth. Do you name the cows?
We used to name all the cows. We used to name all the cows when they were, when we were milking 100 or 150. We named all the cows, and the daughter's first name would start with the letter of their mother's first name. So if the mother was Mary, the daughter would be Melissa. Then so it was, and then.
I love this.
But now we've got so many animals.
And
They're numbers now. Everybody's got their own unique number, but we don't do the naming anymore.
I was always curious about that.
we used to, they all used to have a pedigree, and you'd be able to look at their chart and know who their grandmother and grandfather was, and but.
So if you didn't grow into this industry, if it wasn't your family's business, okay, would you wanted to be a farmer?
I don't know. That's a good question. I enjoy farming a lot, but if I hadn't grown up doing it, it's kind of one of those things that if you don't grow up doing it, it's kind of hard to get into it anyway. If
right.
Especially big farms like that, they're usually always kind of been family controlled throughout the generations. So I don't know. I guess if I hadn't have been a farmer, I'd probably been a teacher or something like that. So.
Okay, and you still could be a teacher
later
on, right?
Yeah.
Teach everyone about farming.
Right.
All the questions I have, you could teach them. Yeah. So let's take you. You went to Massachusetts for your education.
Yeah, I went to Northeastern University right in Boston. Yeah.
My husband went to Northeastern.
All right.
My daughters both went to Northeastern.
Yeah.
So, that's exciting.
Yeah.
And then you came back and you applied for the town administrator. They scooped you up. Thank you.
Yep.
And in you went. Municipal government. Entirely different world.
Yeah, it sure is. Yeah, it's a different kind of thing.
Personalities are interesting.
Yep.
And your model is different, say, like a Newport, which has a mayor who steps in as the CEO as well. So there's no mayor there. It's a town, so it's not a city.
Correct.
Right? And so you went in and it's a full select board, correct?
Yep, 3-person select board.
Okay.
Yep.
So you don't vote, correct?
Nope.
Okay, so it's a 3-person select board, and so that's based, they have a charter?
They have a charter, yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And are they allowed to expand there?
There is actually, I believe, going to be an article at this year's town meeting in Coventry to expand to a 5-person.
Oh, we got the scoop. Let's talk straight.
There was, they were a couple residents in the town. Got a petition together to do that. They wanted the select board to do a special town meeting, off like this summer. that the select board actually had some of the folks from that petition come into a select board meeting, and they said, look, we'll put this on next year's town meeting. And they were happy with that. They said, okay, we'll withdraw the petition, so we don't need to do the special town meeting, as long as you agree that when March rolls around, you're going to have it as an article on there. Yeah. So.
Good. So, do you know how many people they've asked for? Or is it just 2 additional?
2 additional. So
it'll always be an odd number.
They would like to go from a 3 to a 5-person select board.
What's your feel for that, based on what you've seen?
It's
always so difficult.
Yeah, I mean, there's pros and cons to it. Obviously, from my perspective, I mean, it's pretty hard, just with a 3-person select board,
right.
Getting everybody informed, and then in Coventry we like to have unanimous. We like everything to be unanimous. We want all 3 to say the same thing, which is going to be tougher with 5. It's going to be tougher with 5 people. Obviously you're going to have some disagreements and some dissension on things. So I can see a lot more 3-2 votes or 4-1 votes as opposed to unanimous votes on things. But on the other hand, Coventry, we've got a lot of money to think about there, and
right.
It doesn't hurt to have 5 people thinking about the best thing to do with that money, as opposed to just 3 people.
And to your credit, Coventry, I've been, as I've been watching Coventry over all the years I've been involved, you've handled your finances.
We hope, we hope so.
You have. I know, because I, have done business with you all from, the fire department, the ambulance department, and everything like that. But just watching it when I was in the legislature, you look and you watch, because you have to pass bills and you have to see what's going on in the different towns. You don't just work for the town you're elected for.
Right.
You work for the, everybody in the state. Of course, you represent your district, but you also have to be well aware of the other needs of all of the other towns and cities, because you don't want your area to be left out, but you don't want everybody else to be harmed. So it's a lot of work, but finances are the key, and with your background, they were very fortunate to get you.
Yes, yep. It was nice to be able to use some of that after many years of farming, which you still use some of it in farming, but not like you do like you do as municipal government. So.
But so going back to that, with the possibility of more people coming in, and it's always nice to have uniform votes. I mean, of course, as long as there's discussion that evolves into a uniform vote, it's okay. Just to have a blanket, we're all going to vote together because, hey, we're good friends, doesn't work.
It does not.
But that comes because of you. That becomes, you were the town administrator, you understood what it meant to be a town administrator. Could you tell us what that means?
I think at the end of the day, it's all about relationships with people. I mean, that's the bottom line. I mean, you've got, when you work as a town administrator or a manager or something like that, I mean, you're going to have the select board's going to change. You're going to get different people. They're going to have different views. They're going to have different ideas about what they want to do with the town or what direction the town has come in. So I think it's the best thing you can do if you're sitting in my chair or something like that is, get these people to sit down. Everybody says what they want, and they discuss it openly. And you try to move forward with the best decisions that you think for the town, and that's right. I think that's what we try to do in Coventry.
But you personally, I remember I was fortunate to come in to work with you when we were talking about the ambulance contract.
Yes, yep.
And the way you handled it, you set up a meeting, you brought in the members of the council and the other interested parties, and you did a whole presentation and the district changes, and you were so thorough and knowledgeable. And that is the vehicle to give a comfort level to the members of your select board, which then gives the comfort level with the transparency to the people who are voting in Coventry. And that's you. And you do have, you know, I was very impressed and always worked with you. I've always been so comfortable and, you know,
Yeah,
the
no,
honesty.
we certainly had a very good working relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always look forward to those meetings because, you know, you were always well prepared, and you know, it wasn't like going in there pulling teeth or anything like that. I mean, everything went smooth, and we got
we did it.
We got done what we needed to get done. So yeah.
And that's the key. So when you have like the finances right now, because I know Coventry is in a good position.
Yep.
And what is the goal for Coventry? What do you?
So
what do you want?
we're kind of treating it as a retirement fund, you know,
Okay.
like you would treat your personal retirement fund. When that landfill, when the state of Vermont says that you're not taking any more trash up there, we don't want to have to pay property taxes, or you know, we don't have to pay massive property taxes. So when that day comes, wherever it is, 2045 or whenever, when they say, you know, you're done up there, we want to have enough money saved so that, you know, for the next 30 or 40 years we can,
Beautiful.
you know, that's the plan. So
Right.
everything we do sort of financially, that's the first thing we do. Like obviously we make a budget, but we go to our long-term investment first. That gets the money first, and then we look and say, okay, what can we do? What roads do we need to pave? What, you know, but that gets taken care of first.
So the investment goes first,
Yeah.
and then the operations
And then
go within your
correct.
confined budget.
Yes. Yeah.
Hooray for you.
Yes. So
Right.
we always make sure that the long-term investment gets its piece before anything else gets
Right.
done, because, you know, that's
finance.
right. We don't, you know, I don't want my kids, if they end up living here, or my you know, I want them to have the same sort of deal that we've had, you know. And
So when you went in there, was that the structure?
It was, but not so much the structure. That's kind of happened over the
Since
last
you've been
couple of years with the select board that we have now. We've sort of kind of taken a step back and looked at the whole thing, and we're looking to hire a town accountant to help us with some planning for stuff like that, because
Wonderful.
we don't, you know, we have a part-time treasurer who does a fantastic job, but he's part-time, and he's, you know,
Right.
you know,
Numbers you can't.
right.
Yeah.
So we want a municipal accountant that will say, hey, you need to put this much money aside every year if you want to reach this number by the time that dump's closed.
Right. Somebody who's really educated in
Yep.
accounting, a CPA, hopefully, but
Yep.
if you can't, so
Right.
somebody who's got that 4 years
Yep.
or so.
Yep.
So what is the structure? I was just going to ask you, is there a treasurer? What is the
Yep,
structure?
we have a treasurer, a town clerk, a delinquent tax collector, planning commission. We got rid of our listers a few years ago, so we have just an assessing firm that we hire that takes care of
Outside.
it. Yep.
How's that
yep.
working out?
It works great. I mean, they send a representative to come into the office a couple times a month, but most of their work can be done remotely. You know, any of the townwide, if they have to do any assessing or appraisals of any properties, they'll send somebody up and do it. But you know, they communicate really well, and we've been with them for 5 or 6 years now, and they've done a really good job.
And compliance-wise, it works.
Yep,
You're able to handle
it's
it.
worked good, and I wasn't there when the town. I mean, I lived in the town when we voted to get rid of the listers, but I wasn't really part of the behind the scenes about why it wasn't working out with the listers. But so I've only known the assessing firm, and it's been good.
Yeah, I've heard there's been a lot of changes going in different towns that way.
Yeah, and I get a lot of calls from town clerks in different towns
Who are
asking,
shifting.
and
Yeah.
saying, "Hey, I heard you guys got rid of your listers a few years ago. What was
check
that?
ours."
What's that been? Yeah, what's that been like?" And they're, and I tell them so.
Well, that's good, but
Yeah.
that's important too. For the other towns to be able to reach
Right.
out to. They watch the successful towns,
Mm-hmm.
or they watch the models that they like, and then they have those conversations, because that's how it works.
Yep.
Okay, you need to be able to pick up the phone or have a meeting and share experiences, so that it might not be exact model,
Right.
but you need to take what works and figure it out. So if you're going to be bringing in, say, an accountant internally, will the treasurer stay on? Or
Oh yeah, we'll
as
still,
part-time?
We'll still have it. Yeah, I mean, the treasurer, I think he works a couple days a week. The town clerk a couple days a week. Really, the only full-time people in Coventry are the town administrator and
Right.
and the road guys.
Okay.
So other than that, the delinquent tax collector, she's part-time, so it's
Sure.
because I mean we're 1,100 people. We don't need those positions filled all the time.
So is the treasurer appointed
Currently appointed.
appointed?
Yeah, currently appointed. So we were elected for many, many years, and then our current treasurer was moving out of town. He was moving from Coventry to Derby, and we didn't want to lose him. So the select board at the time asked the town if they would switch it over to an appointed position.
Okay.
And the town voted in favor of doing that, and so we've been appointing this gentleman to the treasurer every year since, and he's done a fantastic job. He's very, very knowledgeable.
Well, that's good.
Yeah,
That's good
yeah.
that it works that
He was,
way.
he was a good person that we didn't want to lose just because he didn't live in Coventry anymore. And
Right.
he was willing to stay on and do the job, and so it's worked out really well.
And that has to make relationships with your other towns good.
Yes.
So you can't have Derby and Coventry like the Hatfields or the McCoys.
Right, right,
You
no.
need to keep it going so that it all works well.
Right.
They need to get past any old issues, because everything was always so my town, my town,
Oh
my
yeah,
town.
yeah.
And which is kind of interesting, the way Vermont was that way, but I think that's changing.
I do. Yeah, I see that too. Yep.
And it's important for the state as a whole and for the people so they can move to whichever areas they want and
Yep.
not be fearful.
Right.
So once now you're going to be moving on.
I move. Yep.
Okay. But you will stay on as a consultant for a while for the transition?
Yep. I'm gonna help. Yep, I'll help out. Hopefully they'll get somebody hired here within the next month or two, so I can
Like
train
that
them
song
on the
called
position.
Dream.
Yeah. and then after that, the select board has asked if I'd be willing to come in maybe a couple hours a week for certain things.
Sure.
And it might not be needed anyway. They might get somebody that'll hit the ground running, and they can
Right,
say.
but
I'm there. I'd be available to help them if they needed to.
Right. And so the new person coming in there will be full-time like
It will be a full-time town administrator.
Sure,
Yep,
because
yep.
that's your model,
That is
and
what-
that's
yeah.
very important.
They like the select board likes having somebody in that building 40 hours a week.
Sure.
Whether if somebody comes in and has a question or needs a copy of their tax bill or something, they like having somebody there. And with the treasurer and town clerk only part-time, they're only there a couple days a week. So
Right.
you're as the town administrator, you're the person, you're representing the town most of the.
Right, that's the model that they have down in like Dorset and Manchester. I want to say Brattleboro, but I don't want to swear to it. But I believe so.
Yep.
With a town administrator, and down in Dorset, the town administrator there is phenomenal.
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely phenomenal. But he's there, and the select board relies on him. And select board's
Yep.
different than a council.
It is, yeah.
Entirely different
Yep.
charters, et cetera.
Yep.
But the Newport Council has all of the authority of a select board, and sometimes I think they need to reread that charter to
Yep.
see what their authorities are. But it's not, instead of just using words, they
Yeah.
need to really understand the good charter that Newport has, as
Right.
well as your charter is a good charter, depending upon the different districts. So what about the assets, capital assets right now that you have in Coventry? How do you deal with those?
Well, we don't have a ton of equipment, I guess. I mean, we have a grader and some other capital pieces of equipment, but other than that, we don't have much. I mean, most of our stuff comes from excess revenue from the tipping fees.
Right. Okay.
We bring in a lot more money than it takes to run the town, so we try to just invest that as best we can and have it last for the future.
What do you feel, if you've been following it, on the education bills and the changes in education?
Yeah, so I mean, Coventry's we've kind of been an outlier, I guess, as far as that goes, because the Coventry School's actually grown over the, we're one of the ones that have actually gotten bigger as far as population and stuff like that.
And Coventry owns their school.
They do, yep. And they actually, speaking of going from 3 to 5, they went from a 3-person school board to a 5-person select board,
Right.
several years ago. And I think that's worked out really well for them. So, yeah, I know there's all this talk about consolidation and moving to, districts and stuff like that. And I know they're doing that over on the Oxu side of things with their junior highs, where they're
Sure.
kind of moving schools together and stuff like that. But we just haven't had a need for any of that in Coventry. I mean, we've got a pretty robust pre-K through 8th grade down there with 150, 160 students. We have a really fantastic principal right now, Jason Lees. He does a great job. I think everybody likes him, and a very smart.
Fakeable. Everybody likes
a very smart school board. There's some intelligent people on there that really have the best interest of the kids, the teachers, and the town in mind.
Sure.
with all the decisions that they're responsible for.
Has anybody gone up to, like, say there's testimony up at the legislature, or who follows the bills for Coventry? Do you do that?
No, the school board does. Yeah. So the board chair for Coventry right now is Praneet Menon, and he's a very, very intelligent person, and I'm sure he knows those bills inside and out. Sarah Bathlon also on the school board, and she follows that stuff and does a fantastic job with it.
And so do they report back just at school meetings, or do they
They
actually
do. Well,
come to your
no,
town meetings?
Praneet, he comes to a select board meeting about once a month, and gives
good.
and gives an update to the select board, and they've really this current school board has really, they've done a really good job of reaching out and trying to work with the town so that the school and the town are getting along and getting being nice to each other, and they've really put in a lot of effort. They invited the entire select board to the Coventry graduation coming up next week. We've got one of our select board members, Dan Webster, who's going to actually speak at the Coventry graduation.
Nice.
So yeah, I got to give the school board a lot of credit. They've put in a ton of effort as far as that goes.
So Coventry also now has the airport, and we were together
Yep.
for a while on the initial task force. And I think you should know that they're going to expand
Yes.
the actual building. They're going to get rid of the terminal there.
Right,
They're
and put a
actually
new
gonna
terminal
put a new
building, right.
terminal in.
Yep.
And I know there's like a lot of, we want it bigger, we want it
Yeah.
big. Okay, but the bottom line is, this is what was approved. This is what the money is. It's not a bad thing because it's going to expand it, and it can still continue to
Right.
be expanded. So it's not like they can't continue it. What you feel for that?
I think it's great.
Yeah.
I really do. I mean, I guess there are quite a few little airports in the state of Vermont, but I mean, to have one that close to the border, to the Canadian border like that, I mean, I think it could be really, really beneficial to this area as
Sure.
far as tourism or business or anything like that. So I'm definitely behind any type of push any kind of juice into that,
Juice it, yeah.
into that project up there and get it moving. And I know from what we did, there's a lot of people that are really believe in that airport and work really hard and have a vision for what they would like to see there. So I'm certainly in support of anything like that.
I agree with you. I know we talked a lot about it.
Yeah.
And I was in the legislature when we passed the expansion of the runway.
Right, yep.
And we got that through, and now hopefully, they'll find an anchor.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
that'll kind of
Yeah.
change the whole
That will be great,
atmosphere.
yeah.
And so I'm hoping, and I know our governor is very business savvy.
He
and
is, yep,
so
yep.
He wants the best business-wise, well thought out, methodical.
Yep.
And so I think he's looking at everything, all of the airports, and I think that he understands completely the international trade issues.
Yep.
And hopefully we can get past what's going on now.
Right, yeah.
So,
we had a bit of a setback. But
keep that going.
Yeah.
So tell me about the actual the infamous dump, right? Okay, because we're going to talk straight here, right? The dump. How has that affected Coventry? What's the people's feelings about that?
You know, I think there's sort of a a love-hate relationship with Casella and the dump, and I guess on the Coventry side it's probably more of a love. I mean, we've had a very good relationship with Casella for many years. Obviously, the money makes a big difference. We've got provides for the Coventry Town Foundation, which is a nonprofit organization that helps out with people with their heating bills or their tax bills, or they provide scholarships to kids in Coventry to go to college. Obviously, our long-term investments are good, have been good, and that's all funded by Casella.
He's been extremely generous.
He's been very generous. Yep.
To very many areas within the state. I know him, of course, from the Bennington, Rutland district. Always out there, and the governor goes put the program together, the tire program, and I forgot the name, and now I should be embarrassed.
Yeah.
But where every year they come and you can get the tires.
Right. Yep.
And it was a great program, and I remember I used to work that with the other fellow Rutland legislators down there. But as far as, I know there's the political issues with the dump, and I know there's the contamination issues, the screaming about it.
Yep.
And so how did your area, you as the town administrator, find you had to deal with those issues? Like if people, or maybe people across the state, climate, environmental issues, do they ever come to you?
They come to us, and we actually have meetings quite regularly with the Department of Environmental Conservation from state of Vermont. They'll send somebody up, and they'll have a meeting once a month, and the public comes in and can complain about Casella, and they'll do their best, and and at the end of the day, I guess I don't really know what's going to happen. I mean, we'll find out. I mean, I hope that they're
intelligently.
It sounds like it. When you hear them talk, it sounds like they're doing everything to save that environment over there and not allow anything to get into the lake or the drinking water. But I mean,
I know we had the leak.
They had a leachate. Yeah, they had a leachate spill over the winter.
But it was contained.
It was. I don't think it ever got into any water. But
no, it didn't.
Yeah.
And it was frozen.
It was frozen.
And so that kind of helped a little bit.
Yeah, our winter saved it.
Thank you, winter in Newport and in Coventry, right? And so that was contained.
Yep.
And I actually had a forum when I was the mayor, so that people from the state as well as the constituent base could come and they can talk about everything that was going on in their issues. But right now, there doesn't seem to be any issues for Coventry.
I don't think so. I mean, the kind of the biggest one right now is they've got that leachate treatment facility on site now. It used to be everything would go out, and now they're treating it right there. And I guess there's some liability in that, if something happens. But I think they're probably the best people to be dealing with that. I mean, I understand why they would want to do it I mean, they're the ones producing all that leachate from the garbage. They might as well treat it there as opposed to trucking it and having somebody. So I think that's kind of the hot button right now. I mean, I don't know if they fast tracked it or what, but or if they were doing stuff before they should have been. But that's kind of the one you hear about the most right now. But like I said, we're mostly in a very good relationship with Casella. I mean,
they're paying attention now. So even though there was that fast track going on there for a while. They jumped on board, and they are now being conservative.
They are, and they're very transparent. If you ask to see, they'll show you. They'll say, "Hey, this is how we treat our leachate." They'll walk you through the whole. They'll walk you through the whole thing, and it looks very professional. And
how will that affect? If you know, or your thoughts, how will that affect further home development in Coventry?
Yeah, see, I'm not sure because I believe that stuff ends up going in the ground at the end of that process. So I don't know if if you can't build in those places anymore or not.
Right.
I'm not sure.
I don't know
I'm not
the final
yeah, I don't know.
answer.
Yeah, I don't know quite the science on that, but I do know. Yeah, I mean, it's all kind of staying there now. So
Right. So, and then also, it's by the airport.
it's by the airport.
So, there aren't that many homes going along that airport strip.
Nope.
Is there another reason why homes are not being built out there or businesses aren't going out there? Do you know?
I'm assuming
just-
I mean, you've got a big dump on one side of you, and then you've got a couple big farms on the other side of you. It's just probably not the most desirable.
But they
place
have
to-
dumps.
That's true,
in,
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
the cities and,
Yeah.
Brooklyn.
Yeah.
I mean, they have Queens, they have dumps
Yeah.
in, all
And
of
Casella,
the
they
states.
make it look really nice. I mean, it's not unaesthetically pleasing to look at. So
Yeah, so I was just curious if there were any ordinances maybe in Coventry that
No.
said you can't build there.
we don't even have zoning in Coventry.
That was
Yeah,
my next
yeah,
question. Tell
yeah.
me about the non-zoning in Coventry.
Well, we have it in our flood zones, but that's it. So other than that, you can build whatever you want. You can build a castle if you wanted to, I guess.
Can you do that for me tomorrow? Have it by Halloween.
Yeah, with a nice moat around it. Yeah, definitely.
Would you really? So if I wanted to say, if developers wanted to come out to Coventry, would the TIF be something that would work in Coventry, or is not even needed?
I don't think
Not needed.
I don't think it'd be needed. No.
Yeah, so it's just an entirely different environment
Yeah.
to the neighbors.
Right.
So we know about your Derby-Newport relationship.
Mm-hmm.
What about like Brownington and the other relationships going the other way? Like,
Yeah.
how does that work with Coventry?
Pretty good, but for the most part. I mean,
Everybody likes
Yeah, I
Coventry.
mean, we have a good, we use Orleans Ambulance and Orleans Fire, for
Which we're getting to next.
for half the town. So we have a really good relationship with them. Brownington, we've always, we help out. Our road guys help them out. Their road guys help us out. Same with Irisburg. So, you kind of keep the people that board you happy, and they do the same for us. So.
So tell me about the ambulances and the fire
Yep.
departments. I mean, I know. 'Cause
You know,
and I-
yeah,
but
right.
I want the people to
Yep.
know. So, there were some changes made, and we
Yep.
both know it's working.
It's working, yes.
It's working. But how does it work for them to know? How can they feel safe? How can they understand that they will be serviced, that, if there's an emergency, the ambulance will get to them, the fire
Mm-hmm.
trucks will get there?
So we'd always, as far back as I can recall, we'd always split the fire. So it was always Newport on one side and Orleans on the other side. But just until recently, Newport Ambulance handled all of Coventry, and I think that was just because Orleans Ambulance wasn't capable at the time, and now they are.
Right.
Obviously, they've done a.
Yeah, they ramped up.
They've ramped up quite a bit, and the select board was looking at that, and they with Orleans sort of expanding their ambulance, they said, well, can we, maybe we can get quicker response times if we split it just like we do the fire. So we looked into that, and we met with you guys, we met with
Right.
the Orleans ambulance people, the Newport ambulance people, and we ended up coming up with a
Great plan.
great plan. Remember, we were in the Coventry with the map on the wall, and they were, everybody was showing, and so that.
I remember walking in as a female mayor and somebody going, "This is a map," and I'm like, "I think I got that part."
But the people that work for those or worked for those emergency services at the time, Newport Fire, Newport Ambulance, Orleans Fire, Orleans Ambulance, like they went out and they drove all those roads for us, and they said, look, this is how long it takes for us to get to here to here, here to here, and so they were very, very helpful in getting that.
Thorough.
They were in getting that done for Coventry, and we're very thankful that they helped us out like that, and So we've been split for the last, I think, 3 years,
3 years?
and it's going good. I mean,
Yeah, that's good.
The
That's good.
You know, the residents of Coventry get their emergency services as quick as possible, and we're lucky. We're sitting in the middle of two very good, ambulance and fire services.
Yeah.
Newport does an excellent job. Orleans does an excellent job. So we're fortunate.
So tell me about the whole hospital situation going on. So you know that, of
Yeah.
course, I went up and I did a whole press conference about reasons why we needed to keep this
Right.
hospital
Yeah,
here.
we do. Yeah.
What's your thoughts on that?
I think it would be catastrophic if we lost our local hospital. I mean, it would just. The healthcare system is wonky enough in this country. I mean,
Great word.
Yeah, to not have a facility, within 10 miles or 15 miles. I mean, it would just.
And not even so much even the 10, 15 miles,
Right.
just not having to take 10, 15 miles and go over some mountain.
Right. Yeah.
That you can't get over
Yeah.
on the nicest day,
Or,
let
or
alone.
have to go down the interstate to St. Johnsbury.
Right.
It's just it doesn't make any sense to me. So I'm a huge proponent of keeping that North Country Hospital
Where it is.
and even improving it and making it. We want good doctors and everything. We want the best for everybody up here. So
That's right. That's right. And we do need the specialists.
we do. Yeah. I mean,
And, it also is going to affect the housing.
Yep.
It's going to affect business development. It's going to affect tourism
Yep.
too. People when they travel, they do need emergency
They do,
services.
absolutely,
They
yep.
need to have access. And, if you're pregnant and you
Right.
travel and you happen to give birth, it would be really good if you could go to a hospital.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, you wonder about some of these statements, and I did read that whole report.
Yeah.
But I'm glad to hear, your position on that. And so I do think that that's a discussion that needs not fade away.
No. Yeah. They got to keep that right on the front burner.
Yeah, and Tom Frank is out there doing what he needs to do. He understands how to run the hospital. He understands the number crunching. He understands the needs of the people. And so I think it'll be under control. I would be highly surprised if it goes with the recommendations of that original report. I think now, I know I spoke to the legislators and they were, no, we're not going to go that way. And so, and I think Tom Frank has it under control. And of course, I was still in my capacity, with all my capacities to be out there, and still doing what I need to do. But yeah, so that's very important because if, let's say, it went the way they said, where would our people go?
I don't know.
I mean, I'm still trying to figure
Right.
that one out. Where could they go?
Right. I mean, the next closest one are Morrisville, St. John. I mean, that's
Which is impossible.
right. I mean, you'd have people dying.
Yeah, that's exactly
Yeah.
right. And, I'm going to stay away from the statement of, oh, well, people die anyway.
Right.
I was
Yeah.
like,
We don't need to. Not
Right.
necessarily, though.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
So I think that it's so important that we all still stay, just as citizens,
Yeah.
making sure that we don't let anything bad happen to that hospital.
No, it needs as much support as we can give it.
Right, and then Tom Frank in his capacity with his team can make sure he keeps bringing in the specialists that are needed,
Yep.
he knows the numbers, and
Yep.
so he knows how to do that. And I've heard nothing but wonderful things about the service provided by the hospital.
Yep.
So it's not like they're horror stories.
No.
I mean, so it's all good.
Yep.
So that's something that's very important. And, bringing in doctors, that'll also bring in, the paraprofessionals, and they'll
Right.
want more housing. And then, the partners will come, and
Yep.
there'll be other careers that stem from that, which hopefully will open up more businesses, whether it be services or businesses, without, no skyscrapers. I mean,
Right.
but you know what I mean?
I know what you mean, yeah.
And so that's the key, is that, and then of course there'll be more of a demand for housing.
Yeah. Yep.
And then more employees.
Yep.
And so that's kind of important.
It is, yeah.
And more restaurants and
Yeah.
things like that. Wow, you're fantastic. So anything you would tell somebody about if they wanted to be a town administrator, what would you tell them? What do they need?
You need to kind of be a people person. You gotta have thick skin. You can't let
Thick skin.
You can't let you're gonna get.
I think anyone has thicker skin than me.
I don't. Yes, you would be a fantastic town administrator. But I was just thinking the other day. I mean, not a lot of people come in and tell you about the good things, or they're not a lot of people come in and tell you about the things you're doing right. But they're going to come in and tell you about the things you're doing wrong, and you have to listen to them. And another thing is a lot of people, they just want to be listened to. They whether you do anything for, they want somebody to sit there and listen to their problem and say, I understand. I'm going to do the best I can for you. And sometimes that's all they want.
The town administrator's their pope.
Yeah.
That is so true.
They go and bang their heads against all these walls, and they at the end of the day, sometimes they just want somebody that'll just hear them out, and say, I get it. I understand why you're upset, and we're going to try to help.
Just hear it.
Yes.
And then if you can actually refer it, sometimes
Right.
you can't come up with a solution.
And sometimes you can't help them.
But you tell them.
Right. Yeah.
You say, hey, I'm as frustrated as you are, and I have to figure it out, but I'm not there yet.
Right.
But they heard you.
And they appreciate the
respond.
honesty. Yeah.
That's the key,
Yeah.
is that communication.
So that's the big thing I would say, and it doesn't hurt to have a background in
Of course.
finance or politics or something like that. I mean,
It actually is encouraged.
it's encouraged.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a lot. You want to be prepared and have all your knowledge when you sit down at a meeting. Because
Really?
otherwise you
I've been to some of those meetings where people sat down and had no clue.
Nobody knew, So, I think the main thing is just you got to be willing to listen to people.
Willing to listen.
You got to be willing to listen and not be closed-minded, and just everybody's different, and everybody's got a different idea about what they think should be going on, and I think it's good to hear everybody out. Give them everybody should have a chance to say how they feel and be heard.
And also not be afraid if you can't get something done or you need assistance,
and sometimes
to
you
go
can't.
to your select board and say, I'm having an issue here, or whoever your immediate supervisor might be, and says, this is my issue, as opposed to turning it into some undercurrent horror.
Yep.
So it's okay.
Yep.
And that's how you work as a group, as opposed to an attack. And that's something that people may be afraid to do.
Yep.
So you have the perfect blend. See, I'm keeping you there. Did you did you notice this? But so we're going to start naming the cows again. And we're going to stay
of course.
But this is wonderful. Is there anything else you'd like to tell our world?
I don't think so. I mean, I'm just thank you for this opportunity. It's fantastic to have a great back and forth conversation. You're so intelligent, and you make it a lot of fun. So I really appreciate you having me in here today, and it means a lot. All the nice things you say about me and Coventry, and So, yeah,
I
thank
love
you.
Coventry.
Yep.
I do.
Yep.
And
Thank you.
so I want to thank you because
you.
I
Yep.
really needed our listening base to hear you so they
Great.
can see what's going on, different municipalities, how they work, how some are so successful with the way they manage their
Mm-hmm.
finances. Doesn't have to be that always was, but they figured it out.
Right.
And so that is very, and of course, finance is very important to
It
me.
is, yep.
And so I thank you for everything you've done, and I am going to come and visit your farm.
All right. Excellent.
So I want to thank everybody. This was Matt. He's fantastic. He is going to run the farm and still be the town administrator and do a great transition for Coventry. Coventry is so fortunate. So thank you for visiting NEK-TV and Straight Talk Vermont with Linda Joy Sullivan today. That's where we get it straight. Thank you.